Hello students, welcome to ePathshala. In today's module, we shall be looking at what is political theory and why do we need it. Political theory is comprised of two terms, political and theoretical. Both these two terms are extremely complex and diverse. Therefore, the entire concept of political theory too has led to numerous debates. The various ideological schools have offered different explanations of the same. In the present module, we shall be exploring four things regarding the idea of political theory. Firstly, we shall be looking at what is political theory. Next, we shall be exploring what are the different meanings that have been given to political theory and how is political theory different from other social theories. Moving on, we shall be looking at what are the different changes that has political theory encountered regarding its nature as well as its scope. Lastly, we shall be looking at why political theory remains relevant to the study of politics. Bhargav defines theory, and I quote, as a particular form of language-dependent systematic expression different from but related to other forms of systematic reflections on the world. Theorizing is the ability of human beings, by virtue of their existence as concept-bearing animals, who live the world through not only its sensory experiences but also through concepts, images, and representations. Such lived experience distinguishes human life from the life of other species. Theory is therefore distinctive from all thoughtful reflections as well. Bhargav defines theory as a form of systematic reflection with 6 distinctive features. The first feature is conceptual sensitivity. For philosophers and theorists, there is almost an obsessive and self-conscious concern with the internal structure of concepts, with how concepts relate to one another and come in clusters, and how in turn they mark their own boundaries. Conceptual sensitivity involves not only an elaboration of different conceptions of an idea, but also the reasoning as to the choice of the conception. Secondly, theories should also have a rational structure. There should be reasons and a chain of reasons that make a theory. Bhargav contends it is this persistent requirement of reasons that enhances the subversive potential of theories to transform social order. A third characteristic of theory is its aspiration to truth and objectivity. Natural science theories claim scienticity and objectivity along with universalism. Many theories of social phenomena have also tried this as the behavioral movement in political science. However, especially with the rise of post-positivism, social theories have tried to distance themselves from scientific deterministic claims, non-accommodation of vantage points of the marginalized, etc. Increasingly, social science theories emphasize on theories as objective only to the extent that they are not founded on subjective experiences and prejudices. Next, while it may be exceptional for theories to be universal, but there should be some degree of generality in a statement to qualify as theory. A theory should hence cover a wide variety of related but disparate phenomena. Also, theories cannot be purely speculative. It should pass through the empirical phenomena and lived experiences. In other words, modern theories cannot be exclusively metaphysical. Sean Best points out 4 characteristics common to all social theories: an epistemology or a body of knowledge of what we know and how we know. Second, an ontology or nature of reality. Third, a historical location, that is, all social theories are products of a particular period of time and reflect realities of that time. Lastly, a set of prescriptions that suggest how we should behave, how the society should be organized, etc. Moving on, now we discuss what is it that is political. The central question or object of political theory has been what is political. The meaning, nature, and scope of political theory indeed then depend on defining or rather redefining boundaries of the political. David Held argues that prior to 1970s, the political mainly dealt with nature and structure of government. It was treated as a domain separate from society and the personal. In other words, prior to the 70s, modern social studies was based on strict disciplinary boundaries that demarcated social, political, psychological, etc. Political has increasingly changed today, making the study of political theory also more diverse and complex. Politics is increasingly seen as a site of conflicting values and interests. For example, except the deliberative Democrats who believe in consensus, Marxists, feminists, critical race theorists, post-structuralists, etc., all bring out the conflictual nature of political in their own ways. Rajiv Bhargava also concedes that the term political has multiple meanings. In this classical view of political, Bhargava contends that there is no distinction between the social and political theory, and also no separation between empirical and normative. Unlike others who explain political theory as characterized by a conflict between the normative and the empirical, or as a debate between political theory and political science, Bhargava speaks of a corresponding change in the relationship between the two after the advent of modernity. Political science then came to mean an empirical inquiry into the exercise of this power, and political theory the most general reflection on the processes, mechanisms, institutions, and practices by which some people are excluded by others from significant decision making. This, however, is also fraught with the problem that there is an end to the dialogue of the polis. Decisions are now taken by the sovereign, and the political becomes the domain of only the sovereign. Such notion of political represents a clear separation of political theory from social theory. While state became the major object of study in political theory, social theory studied the structures and processes outside the state. The assumption was that the key decision-making actor is the state, and hence the privileging of this narrow definition of political. The narrow definition of political as a realm of state has been challenged, especially by most sections of feminist theory that purport to dismantle the dichotomy between the public and the private, as well as the idea that the public domain is exclusively the state. The state centricism in political science faced major challenges when the embeddedness of the state in the society or social relations and structure of power was exposed by Marxists, feminists, critical race theorists, postmodernists, and others. For example, let us take the argument of Gopal Guru. He goes on to say that the Indian Constitution guarantees legal rights against untouchability but lacks provisions for the moral goods of recognition, dignity, and a guarantee against humiliation. Furthermore, this also implies that the state cannot be studied as an independent actor. This phase thereby again collapses the social and political into a single entity. The postmodernists especially brought to the fore the idea that power is not concentrated in the sovereign as a direct command or control over others. On the contrary, power is more capillary and disciplinary, and it is located more in social institutions and norms. Political theory is not really different from social theory in this perspective, though postmodernism questions the idea of theory itself. In view of these developments in the political, Bhargava defines political theory as a particular form of world-dependent systematic reflection with a wide range of objects of study. Moving on, we now read and understand what is political theory. The compound term political theory is a product of 19th and 20th centuries. The subject and scope of political theory has been a contentious issue in recent times. Andrew Haywood speaks of two kinds of political theory: traditional political theory and formal political theory. The traditional political theory is analytical study of ideas or doctrines in political thought, and in that is clearly normative and ethical. This is closer to philosophy and literary analysis. While formal political theory is based on economic model, building to study the behavior of rational, self-interested actors. All these point to the diversity in the methods, approaches, and subject matter of political theory. At the same time, Drizek, etc., point out to the commonalities in terms of commitments to the democracy, justice, etc., despite the variety in terms of approaches, methods, etc. One of the most contentious debates in political theory has also been its relationship with political philosophy. Very often the two are used interchangeably in virtue of normative underpinnings of political theory. Leo Strauss argues that every political action has an end, either preservation or change of the existing social arrangement. Strauss contends political goal is necessarily about common good, though the latter is essentially controversial. These perspectives underscore the primacy of normative and prescriptive tasks of political theory. The normative essence of political theory is reasserted by Philippe Petit in his work Contemporary Political Theory. Following Plominzas, Petit argues that political theory should be engaged with the purposes or ends of the government and not how it functions. Andrew Vincent, in his work The Nature of Political Theory, offers another perspective on the normative nature of political theory. Vincent contends that the standard texts of political theory are about a certain normative value: democracy, liberty, rights, justice, etc., and their promotion. Vincent argues that all philosophy implies theorizing or theory, but all political theory is not philosophy. This implies that political theory cannot be reduced to political philosophy. Political theory is strictly not political philosophy has also been the claim of many works of various theorists. Mion argues that methodological frustration and philosophical uncertainty are endemic to political theory. However, political philosophy in this perspective is expected to be linked with and informing political practice and should be in the service of the political processes. Similarly, J.G.A. Pocock states that political theory acknowledges certain norms and procedures through which statements are constructed, validated, and critiqued. However, Pocock distinguishes theory from political philosophy in that the latter seeks to find out how these procedures have been arrived at. The subject of political theory, however, has not been an exclusive engagement with normativity. Indeed, there are others who see the expression political theory itself as an oxymoron. While theory or theoria deals with the realm of thinking or contemplation, politics is about praxis. Political theory has also raised questions on the methods to arrive at these norms or political statements. Vincent iterates that one way of theorizing, the method influences the substance of the theory itself. He thus calls for the study of political theory not only as conventional domain of internal substantive matter, but also the processes of theorizing. At another level, many writers underscore the limitations of division of labor between normative political theory and empirical one. Swift and White argue that normative political theory can be limited in understanding the real phenomena of politics unless coordinated with empirical social science. This in turn brings to life Petit's idea that accords importance to the feasibility of values and moral judgments. This also suggests possibility of conflict between the desirable and the feasible. This statement suggests a division of labor between political theory and other domains of political science. Swift and White recommend a collaboration between normative and empirical social science. However, such collaboration is not new in the study of politics. One cannot argue that political philosophy or theory have been completely divorced from empirical ideas. For example, Aristotle's discussion on the regime types in politics. Evolution of political theory is next on agenda. Political theory is widely held to have originated in the modern period. Political theory, hence, is widely regarded as a product of modernity ushered in by Enlightenment. However, there have been debates regarding modern origins of political theory. A few scholars are of the view that political theory has its origins in classical Greece, which first witnessed the reflective approach to the study of politics. Eric Nelson, in a similar vein, speaks of republican political theory that emerged in early modern Europe, alluding to Greek and Roman traditions that qualify to be described as political theory. Contemporary scholars have also alluded to Islamic political theory, Confucian political theory, challenging Eurocentrism of political theory. There are, however, those who endorse and reinstate the primacy of Western political theory. John Donne, for instance, defends the relevance of Western political theory on two counts: the continuous and self-conscious historical development of political theory and its rigorous and systematic historical analysis. Most works on political theory speak of the decline of the discipline, particularly normative political theory in the 50s and 60s. The 1950s witnessed the decline of political theory as echoed by its death by Peter Laslett. The horrors of Nazism, rise of empiricism and logical positivism, as well as behavioralism, were responsible for this crisis. The absence of any commanding work of political philosophy in 50s and 60s is also taken as a ground for the same. However, on a different note, Bhikhu Parekh challenges the decline of political theory. He contends that these decades saw some path-breaking works of political philosophy, including those of Oakeshott, Arendt, Berlin, Popper, etc. The period also witnessed the reconstruction of Marxist political philosophy by Marcuse, Althusser, Habermas, etc. However, Parekh does recognize that the two decades are a distinctive phase in political philosophy for three major reasons. First, most of the political philosophers of the period hardly engaged with the works of others. Secondly, there was an awareness that political philosophy is under stress from various factors, including positivism. Hence, the general tone suggested that either it was an impossibility or was a non-necessity for the Western world to be agreed on philosophical principles. Third, they criticized almost all existing paradigms, having been victims of Nazism and Stalinism. Popper's attack on historicism, Oakeshott's criticism of rationalism, and Berlin's denouncement of moral monism are some examples. Parekh therefore argues that political philosophy was dead, not because of absence of works in the field, but it was dead because it did not conform to the established meanings of political philosophy. In a similar vein, Terence Ball, alluding albeit to the decline in political theory, contends that in 50s and 60s, the task of political theory was deemed to be of mere classification of concepts that can be used in political science. However, by the 1970s, challenges to positivism took the shape of different alternatives that were engaging not only with the meaning and explanation of social phenomena, they were also highlighting the role of history and context for understanding politics. Hermeneutics and other post-positivist methodologies gradually replaced scienticism in social studies. The revival of political theory is traced to 1970s, particularly with Rawls' theory of justice. It was further spearheaded by the launch of three journals: Interpretation, Philosophy and Public Affairs, and Political Theory. For David Held, it is at this stage of challenging behavioralism that political theory's critical role in social transformation was also underscored. He perceives this renewal of political theory in 7 forms: as the history of political thought, for example, the works of Quentin Skinner and John Donne; as a form of conceptual analysis involving clarification of key concepts and issues like democracy, sovereignty, justice, involving works of Rawls and Hayek; as a systematic elaboration of foundation of political value, or as an invigoration of moral foundation of political philosophy, example Rawls, A Theory of Justice; as a form of argument concerned with abstract questioning of theory as well as practical political issues, example Iris Marion Young, Joshua Cohen, Habermas on deliberative democracy. Political theory also in its new form has an arena of debate between foundationalists like Rawls, who reinstate universalist principles, and anti-foundationalists who are votaries of contingency of meaning. Lastly, as a form of systematic model building, for example, Anthony Down's economic theory of democracy, von Boehm's rational choice approach, etc. One cannot disagree with Held that none of these renewed versions of political theory are beyond controversies and inconsistencies. What is interesting is that political theory today cannot be based purely on political philosophy or political science. This is evident in Parikh's argument that though political theory has strong moral dimension, it is more contemplative and reflective rather than prescriptive. Another feature of political theory post its revival is the pluralism in discipline in terms of ideas, issues, approaches, and methods. The danger of appropriation of normativity by totalitarian ideologies was addressed by Isaiah Berlin in 1962 essay, Does Political Theory Still Exist? Berlin's answer was that political theory can survive only in pluralist or potentially pluralist society with competing and colliding ends. Andrew Vincent highlights the complex and internally contradictory nature of political theory in its modern and postmodern phase. Vincent argues there are 5 conceptions of political theory, each embodying a definitive foundational element: classical, normative, institutional, historical, empirical, and ideological political theory. Bhargav's explication of normative, explanatory, and contemplative political theories also suggests multiple foundations and tasks of contemporary political theory. However, while the complexity and diversity of issues in political theory expands its scope and ensures its longevity, others are of the view that this expansion is a challenge to the survival of political theory itself. Terence Ball views the distancing of political theory from its own subject matter as a major challenge. Lastly, why do we need political theory? There has been a wide variety of reasons that justify the same. Those like Michael Frieden, who want to differentiate between political theory and philosophy, primarily underscore the role of theory in understanding and facilitating political processes. Some others are uncomfortable with what Shapiro calls narcissistic tendency of political theorists, wherein they treat political theory as specialized activity disengaged from political science. Ruth Grant makes it a central task of political theory, albeit the tensions with political science, for a mutual engagement with politics without becoming a science. Grant's argument is therefore on the lines of mutual engagement between the normative and empirical. All these works in political theory bring to focus the mistake of separating the empirical and the normative. The mutual engagement of philosophy and political theory is underlined by Bhargav. Contemporary theory, Bhargav argues, performs 4 interrelated functions. Firstly, at the most general level possible, it evaluates and tells us what we should do and speculates about our current and future condition. It also tells who we are. Depending on the roles of theory, Bhargav classifies them as explanatory, contemplative, and normative. He alludes to 2 functions common to social and political theory: interpretation and explanation, and secondly, providing insights to social phenomena that may not be completely explained by empirical theories, which is the contemplative role. Political theory can also be space for value pluralism. Isaiah Berlin sees this theory as an arena of value pluralism rather than prescription of common good. Politics here is distinct from social, and politics is regarded as the sphere of political freedom where individuals choose their own values. Arendt's proposition of separating the personal from political represents the fear of totalitarian tendencies of normative theories. Grant, on the contrary, gives a different picture. She argues that determining relative significance of values is necessary for political theory. It also leads us to the third role of theory, that is normative. Political theory primarily is seen here as either an arena of evaluation of norms or even as an instrument towards designing good society or leading a good life. Value judgments and ought questions are therefore critical to politics. Bhargav therefore lays down 3 major functions of political theory which other social theories do not undertake. First, political theory offers a general reflection on the human condition, which is more philosophical and closer to metaphysical knowledge. Second, the exercise of power as well as mechanisms of exercise of power. This involves not only studies of state, but also on the capillaries of society, if they are sites of power. And lastly, political theory is also the study of how this power should be wielded, by whom, and why, in the light of which values and ideas are of the good life. Let us now summarize whatever we have picked up throughout this module. Firstly, we realize that the study of political theory still remains an extremely contested domain. The different definitions offered by various scholars have all either debates or other forms of conflicts within them. Moving on, we realize that political theory tries to engage both the normative and empirical aspects of politics. In its long evolution that political theory has encountered, there has been a certain trend that we can decipher. Political theory has moved from foundationalism to anti-foundationalism. It has moreover moved from universalism to particularism, and finally it has also tried to deconstruct the idea of objectivity to move towards more subjective realms. Hence, the study of political theory till date remains an extremely diverse and complex phenomena that needs a holistic understanding for the study of the subject of political science. Thank you.